Today's scripture reading is from the book of Mark, chapter 3, verses 13 through 19 and 33 through 35 in the Voice. Jesus called together a select group of his followers and led them up onto a mountain. There he commissioned them, the 12. Later he calls them his emissaries. He wanted them to be with him. He sent them out to spread the good news and to cast out evil spirits and heal disease. Here are the names of the original 12. Simon, whom Jesus called Peter, meaning the rock. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, whom Jesus called the sons of thunder. Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, the tax collector, also called Levi. Thomas, James, the son of Alphaeus. Thaddeus, Simon of Canaan, who was also called the Zealot. And Judas Iscariot, who one day would betray Jesus to the authorities in Jerusalem, so God's purpose could be fulfilled. When Jesus' mother and brothers arrived, they couldn't break through the crowd, so they sent word in to Jesus that he should come out to them. The crowd was pressed in tight around him when he received the message. Your mother and brothers and sisters are waiting outside for you. Jesus looked around. Jesus, answering them, who are my mother and brothers? He called into the silence. No one spoke. At last, his gaze swept across those gathered close, and Jesus smiled. Jesus said, you here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does the will of God is my true family. May God add blessing to the reading, hearing, and living of these words. Amen.
How's that morning? When you get in the car, do you prefer to know where you're going? Anybody? Yeah. Okay, why? Makes life easier. Sure. Like if you know where you're going, you know the route you need to get there, right? Where you're going determines the path you take to get there. I don't know about you, but in our house, if we're going to the grocery store, it's one route. If we're going to school, it's a different route. If we're going to see grandma, that's yet another route. Right? Where you're going determines the route you need to take to get there. Right? Yes. So, it's no secret that when we opened here at Ridge Road in the 1st of March, it was like a reboot for this congregation that's been around for, 160 some years, after 100 plus years in the historic building, and 15 months wandering in the wilderness, as it were, waiting to be home again. This has felt, and you all have, this isn't me saying this, is you all telling me that being in this place has felt like a reboot, a restart, a chance to wipe the slate clean and start again. Yes? And like any good reboot of your technology that clears the cache of cookies, that's what our time here has felt like. And so it's reasonable to ask when we start again, where are we going? What's our destination? Well, the way we've been formulating that question since the first part of March is with this question, what are we doing here? We asked that from the very beginning, weeks and weeks ago. What are we doing here? And then we said, well, what are we doing here on mission? And what are we doing here in the midst of the Jesus Wars? And then we said, what are we doing here with Palms and Passion and Power? And then resurrection happened and it interrupted the whole series. Because that's what resurrection does. It interrupts life as we know it, or at least life as we expect it to be. Resurrection comes along and says, there's life even in those places where you thought there was no life. Even in those places where you thought death reigned, resurrection comes along and says, no, God has a different word, and that word is life and hope. But today we're back to that question. What are we doing here? This time we're asking, what are we doing here with vision? What does vision look like? What does vision look like? That's the Marvel comic book superhero named Vision. It's not Green Lantern like somebody asked me, though. No, its name's Vision because that's the joke. Actually, though, the character Vision in the comics was originally created by the villain Ultron to be Ultron's vision for what the future of humanity should look like. Sorry, was I too geeky? Sometimes I get overexcited. But if you want to have that conversation later, I'd be happy to. No, our vision, instead, we've said for a while now, our vision is as an inclusive gathering of found family, learning to be like Jesus and serving the community. We'll unpack this a little bit more in a moment, but consider this our statement of what we want the future to look like. Who are we striving to be? We're striving to be an inclusive gathering of found family, learning to be like Jesus and serving community. Aren't we already doing that? Well, yeah. In some ways and on some days, we certainly are. But it's also our destination. To really, really stretch the analogy, we've gotten in this beautiful new car that is Ridge Road, and we're setting off for a destination. And that destination is an inclusive gathering of found family, learning to be like Jesus and serving the community. Now, quick recap about how we got to that as our destination. We said to begin with, well, let's start with what's our purpose. And we said our purpose that comes straight from Jesus, who tells us to love God with our whole selves and love our neighbors as ourselves. All of those who want to follow God in the way of Jesus, this is who we're called to be. People who love God with our entire being, our whole selves. And people who love ourselves enough to love our neighbors in that same way. And then we said, that's our purpose, we have a mission. The United Methodist Church defines our mission as making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. We've added that's got to begin with us. Because it seems to me, if you stop with making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, it can too easily become some version of, well, we've got this all figured out here, and let us bring the truth that we have all figured out to you, the unwashed masses. That's not who we want to be. That's not who we are. Because we've seen the awfulness that can lead to. We've seen the way that approach that thinks we've got it all together and we just need to transfer what we've got all together to everybody else. We've seen the deep sin that creates. We've seen how that attitude leads to justifying the genocide of crusades, leads to justifying centuries of war, centuries of colonialism, leads to justifying what was the transatlantic slave trade, leads to justifying the genocide that was Manifest Destiny. And boarding schools, and Jim Crow, and all of that, over and over and over again, used Christianity to justify words of faith, that idea that we've got it all figured out, you just need to learn from us. We'll just plant what we think in your lap and you become us. No, friends, if we're going to partner with God's Spirit to bring about transformation, it must begin with us. Transformation is an ongoing project, a path, rather than a destination. So that brings us back to our question for today. What are we doing here with vision? If we're seeking to transform the world, beginning with ourselves, what's that transformation? What's that transformed world look like? We've suggested it looks like an inclusive gathering of found family, learning to be more like Jesus and serving the community. That's a lot of words. Don't tell anybody, but words are kind of the thing that we do here. But what we're after is flourishing. The flourishing of ourselves, of our neighbors, of our communities, and of the planet. Did you notice in that reading we had from the Gospel of Mark, who does Jesus identify as his family? Everybody, yeah, everyone who follows him, anyone who does the will of God is my true family, Jesus said. That's our idea of a found family, that our family is not just those to whom we are related, but our found family can include anybody. Because the sad truth is, for some of us, our related family has let us down. Has not always been who we've needed them to be. We go with that metaphor of found family because, at least at its best, it's always looking to expand. There's always an open spot at the table for a found family. Too often, biological families are closed. They've got all the members they need. The found family, at its best, there's always a spot open for someone else. I think that's the piece of what Jesus is getting at there. Anyone who is interested in following God in his way is part of that found family. Now, we skipped over a little bit in that text. There's a part where Jesus' family hears a little bit about what he's doing. Oh, he's healing, and he's proclaiming the forgiveness of sins, and he's teaching folks, and he's doing these things, and the family's concerned. It's almost as if, here's the analogy for you, that as a parent or a grandparent, how do you feel when in the midst of the school day you get a call from the school? Right? It's almost always either your child is in trouble or they're hurt. And frankly, I don't know which one to wish for. Right? You get that call. We've had it a few too many times. You get that call in the middle of the school day, and it's the school, and it's the nurse. Hey, I've got your daughter here. She was hit in the head with a soccer ball at recess, at gym class, and I think she's got a concussion. We get a call like we did just a couple weeks ago. Hey, it's the trainer. We got your son here. He took a ball in the eye. Or just this last week, we got a call, and it wasn't either of those things. It was letting us know that the school was on soft lockdown, what they call hold and teach. You may have heard that there was a shooting in Naperville that was about a mile from our house, a little less than 2 miles from the school, and it meant multiple schools. A couple of elementaries and 2 junior highs and the high school were locked down for an hour and a half after school. And for the briefest of moments, I was relieved that it wasn't a call about a kid in trouble or hurt. What kind of terrible human beings relieved that there's a lockdown? Well, this one, apparently. And everybody was okay, and it's not a fatal shooting, and they caught one of the suspects and whatever, but oh my gosh. If there's a symbol, is there a better symbol of the need of a transformed world than that schools have a procedure already in place called hold and teach because of the reality of gun violence in our communities? If that's not an indication of a world that needs transformation, I don't know what is. Are you with me? So essentially, Jesus' family gets that call. Your son's in trouble. Come get him. And so they do. They rush to where he is. And when they get there, they can't get in because the crowd's too big. So somebody gets a message to Jesus, hey, your family's here. And he uses that opening as an opportunity to say, my family isn't just those with whom I'm related. My family is all of you. I love the Voice translation because it gives us some little insights that are hinted at in the text that aren't always explicit. It's, Jesus looked around at those gathered and smiled and said, essentially, you all are my family. Friends, in this place, that's who we're striving to be. Where you all are part of this found family. Where every body is welcome here. Every single person. Be explicit about what we mean by that word inclusive. I heard a great quote this week from author Mia Correa, who said, "Inclusion isn't just inviting someone to sit at your table, it's believing they belong there." Isn't that great? Let me say that again. Inclusion isn't just inviting someone to sit at your table, it's believing they belong there. So that's why in this place, that's what we mean by inclusion. Let other denominations and other congregations still banty about whether, if women get to be full and autonomous people in society and in the church in charge of their own bodies and spirits and minds, that in this place we're no longer asking if. For decades we've been saying no. The only question is how. How can we best include our women to preach and teach and serve? And in this place, let other congregations, other denominations, other people in our country worry about whether, if our LGBTQ neighbors should be included. No, we're done asking if in this place our gay and our lesbian and our transgender and our all of our neighbors are fully welcome, because not because we're just invited, but because we know they belong. That's what we mean by inclusion. The question isn't if, the only question is how. How do we best join together for the flourishing of all? Let other folks, other congregations, other denominations, other people in the country wonder still if our black and our brown and our indigenous neighbors and family and friends belong. No, we're done asking if. In this place, we only ask how. How can we best join together in a way that leads to the flourishing of all? That's what we mean by inclusive, found family. Joining together for the flourishing of all of our members and our neighbors and our family. Because that's what Jesus calls us to be. Are you with me? Now, let's go back to that text for a few minutes here. Did you notice the action words? As soon as the disciples are called, it's not, hey, sit around and think about how things are going to be for a while, or just train with me. No, right away Jesus sends them out. It's full of action verbs. Go, heal, teach, share, feed. Not for nothing, but did you notice too, how many of those original 12 had multiple names? Simon and Peter and the Rock and Cephas and James and John and the sons of Zebedee and the sons of thunder. Can we stop pretending that we're not capable of calling people or understanding to call people by different names? The names that they're choosing. Why do you call me Pastor Dave and not Pastor David? Because I've asked you to call me Pastor Dave, because that's what I'm comfortable with. There's no reason to continue to pretend that we can't call people by the names that they prefer to be called. In that text, Jesus sends his disciples out right away. It says, you have a mission to complete. Well, maybe not complete. You have a mission to embark on. Right away, they're given tasks, a calling, a mission. Anybody think they got it right? All of you got it all right away? No, why not? Why do you not think so? I'm guessing because you've met people. Because we are people. Because we know that's not how it goes. It's more a destination. It's more a path than a completion. Active words. We use action verbs. Have you ever looked at the order of worship and wonder why we use the words that we do? Because we're used to why don't we call it benediction or I don't know, prayer or whatever? Well, it's praying. No, it's gathering. No, it's proclaiming. Now, why? Well, because I like to do things differently, sure. But also because those are action words. We're choosing those verbs on purpose because this is to be an active, participatory place. We're on a mission. We're not just here to sit, even though inexplicably we ask you to sit for 18 to 22 minutes every week and just listen to somebody. Like, I don't know why we do that. We probably need a better, more active version of what we do in this place, and we'll get there. But verbs, action words. Worship is meant to be participatory. Life is meant to be participatory. Being the disciples Jesus calls and sends is a participatory act, one we're continually learning, one that we're continually seeking to serve in ways old and new. We said a few weeks ago that resurrection is only real if we embody it. Resurrection is only really real if we live it. That's what Jesus is calling us to do. Live this mission. We're seeking the flourishing of the planet. We think Jesus has some really good and important things to say about that, so we're trying to learn to be more like him and to serve the community, not just locally, but in concentric circles out to even globally. So what are we doing here with Vision? Who are we doing our best to be? What are we doing here is our question. And friends, I suggest the answer is, this doesn't have to be the answer for all of time, but in this moment, in this time, in this place, you and I and we, I believe, are called to strive to be, can you say it with me? An inclusive gathering, a found family, learning to be like Jesus and serving the community. Amen.